to it. And I always go left. So I'm going to start with you.
Sure. My name is Natalie Sloan. I have one child. His name is Tal, and he's in the preschool here. So talking to young kids, I'm sure you're going to cover that. I just read the section. What I need to understand is, how do I help my family members or other people who are not familiar with Israel talk about terror situations with me in front of Tal? We visited Matt's family on the dad's side, and they're not Jewish. And they were like, terrorism, murder, kidnapping, and like they were talking about it like it was news, and like it was huge, and it was insensitive, and I didn't know how to navigate that. So
okay, great. So not only how do I talk to my kid, but how do I protect my kid's space? Okay, great. Thank you.
My oldest, Alana, was at the school for years, and then now is in religious school with Mr. Andy in the second grade class.
Second grade. Okay.
And then my baby is starting an adult in Camp Zion in the summer. She's 16 months. Thanks, Clara.
Okay. And just for, I'm sorry, and I don't want to shut anybody down, but because we have limited time, your name and the age of your kids and a burning question is great.
So Alana, I believe, would be the only first grade public school class. And I just don't know if this opens up so low that like how people are talking about it there in front of her, and she knows she's
12 or 14-year-old ones that we are
They're in the like that things are happening, or you're worried about things happening? Okay.
Very strong. Pretty typical, like Black lady.
Okay.
And non-Jewish dad. Dad is like another thing. But I think this has been really name for them.
Okay.
And I can just give you one example. Like we got a blue and white ribbon from here, and I had to have a whole conversation with him last week about how I feel safe because we're on the way to the L, and I felt. So I guess this is my question: is that I felt both powerfully, but also that my job, like I have different jobs that I always have to think about. My first job is while I'm not ashamed to be Jewish, I don't want someone to take over.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to put our children at danger from idiots that are
Oh, of course. I completely forgot we had these. I'm sorry. I'm so silly. I'm sitting here having trouble hearing you, and I have these right next to me.
Do I need to repeat?
They're on.
Okay.
No, you don't need, it's not on.
Not on.
The other one working any better?
Testing.
Can you hear me now?
No, try like almost eating it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. So can you just summarize the question, which is kind of like, what do I do in public?
I don't know if I have one question. I think
Okay.
we're just in this strange, I don't know the Jewish word for purgatory, which is where we don't have a
Get
place to
close.
be.
You got to like almost kiss it.
Um,
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I have a 4 and 6-year-old daughters.
Okay.
4 and 6.
Great.
I'm just gonna listen. I don't have a burning question.
Great.
I'm Rachel. I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, and
Okay.
we live in Brookfield, where I'm pretty sure my kids are the only Jewish kids in their district.
Okay.
So my oldest has been in a situation where she actually corrected her teacher last
Okay.
week because there was misinformation shared by her social studies teacher. Not intentionally, but just lack of knowledge. So I guess any ways to educate my middle schooler and almost middle schooler in a way that makes them feel comfortable and safe at the same time.
And perhaps also the environment. Like you might, we'll talk about like, what is our role in making spaces safe for our kids, or our efforts to make space safe for our
Without having
kids.
to put the burden on them. of being
Correct.
cleaner,
Yeah.
like we are.
Hi, I'm Laura. I have 4 kids. They're 10, 7, 4, and 2.
Okay,
We are the only Jewish people at their school.
okay,
They're only Jewish kids, and we live in Lombard, but the area we're in is a very high Muslim Arab area.
Okay.
So while we're good with our neighbors, there's a very large population of that at school. And so just making sure, like, I don't want the kids to be like scared of their identity, but also be on the lookout of like making sure kids say something to them. So I feel like I'm treading a very thin line of like not wanting them to be scared at school, not talk to kids,
Yeah.
but also aware.
Yeah.
Of their surroundings.
how do
So,
we prepare our kids for the world that they live in?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm Joey. I have the same kids because we're married. Um, And I'm just here to listen.
great,
Or-
okay,
I'm Beth. My daughter's almost 10.
Okay.
Same school. I would say being the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors and having a lot of generational trauma, I am already trying to give her that information without filtering out as much generational trauma as I possibly can. And then how do I do this for her? Being she was born in Israel, being ran to the bomb shelters a lot as a baby. How do I filter out as much like trauma as humanly possible without giving her the upbringing I did? Certain the Nazis were gonna come back, and like afraid that the fact that we had like 3 other Jewish families on a very small block meant that they were 100% gonna come and find us.
okay. Thanks. You want to just introduce yourself?
Sure.
I know about your kid.
Hi, I'm Matt.
And,
That's all.
and do you have any burning questions?
I don't have any burning questions, so you're listening.
All right, great. And I'm really excited to introduce my colleague Eliza.
Hi, I'm Elisa Steinberg.
Elisa,
You're good.
sorry.
I'm Elisa Steinberg. I'm the JCFS liaison for this synagogue. So I actually brought in Tracy Kite for this program. With, of course, the staff's permission and their request. So I'm just here to observe and then bring back the questions for the staff so we can, expand if there's any questions or any other needs that you all may have. Please feel free to let us know.
Okay. So I'm gonna let Elisa be the holder of the mic because clearly I've already forgotten about it. So here's where I want to start. Do you guys remember the middle of like the first year of COVID? Okay. Do you remember how clueless you felt? Like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to, some concrete things, like, I don't know how to work in my house with my kids at home, but some like, I don't know how to talk to my kids about this. I don't know how much to tell them and how much to shield them. So what I've been saying is I think COVID helped train us for this moment, right? Because we built some skills and I don't want to forget those skills. We've been in situations where we didn't know the answers. Our kids were in environments where what we were telling them wasn't necessarily the same as what other kids were saying and believing. So one of the things that I always am concerned about when we reach things like this of like, I've never been here before, is that we take advantage of everything that we've already learned and experienced, right? So when you have questions, one of the really useful things for me to do is, what have I already experienced that taught me how to handle this situation? Right. So because I'm assuming that your kids were in school with people who believed very differently about the pandemic. Right? And so you had to talk to them about how to navigate those situations. So I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but I'm telling you that you have some skills here that are really useful. You guys are new parents. You didn't have a kid during COVID, so you get to build all the new skills. So when the synagogue asked us to come in, they really said they wanted us to talk about how to talk to kids in age-appropriate ways. Now, none of you raised that as your burning question. Is that a concern for anybody? Okay. And you guys have 4 kids, so age-appropriate is,
Just like, the way we talk to our 10-year-old is very different.
Yep.
The way our 4-year-old.
yes, except that your 4-year-old lives in the house with your 10-year-old. And so, right. It's funny. So I have twins. So I don't actually deal with that. I mean, I also have a stepchild, but I also have a stepchild, but no, there are pluses and minuses to twins. And one of the advantages is you're at every developmental stage once, and then you're done. God forbid you learn anything useful, you're done. So in that way, I think the COVID experience is really relevant, right? About how much. So I always think that there are 2 pieces of talking to our kids. There's content and there's language, right? So how much do I want to expose them to? And once I figure that out, what language am I going to use to communicate with them what I need to say? Your content is going to end up being the content for your 10-year-old because you're in one house, right? And your 4-year-old is exposed to the content from the 10-year-old. So one of the things that, and for those of you anybody who has kids in school, it's kind of the same thing. Good morning. We always want to be the people who our kids come to talk about the hard things. And in order for that to happen, we need to be the first people who raise it with them. I mean, it's not hard and fast, but that's the goal. That's the road you want to be on, because that says to them, this is something you can come and talk to me about. So all the things that you imagine your kid might be running up against out in the world, you want to raise with them at the beginning. You're not going to have every scenario down, and you're not going to have you're not going to have the answer to every question, but you want them to be very clear that you are the source that they can come to. So in your case, I would say you're going to use the level of knowledge that you think your 10-year-old is going to be exposed to, but you're going to use language that your 4-year-old understands, if that makes sense. Now, you might then later have conversations with your 10-year-old after your 4-year-old goes to bed about very specific things that might happen at school that your 4-year-old doesn't need to worry about. But, if you're talking about this at the dinner table, which I think lots of families are, then you're going to need to make sure that it is accessible to everybody at the table. Does that give you some guidance on that particular question? Okay. And so then the other big question that I'm hearing is, what do I do about the world? Right? It's one thing to manage my house. I think I can do that. What do I do about the world? And there were 2 sort of separate examples, or 3, that I heard in the questions. One is, what do I do about other adults who are perhaps often not thinking about the fact that kids have ears and they hear everything that goes on around them? And particularly when kids are little, it is, in my opinion, our job to be the protector, right? So just like we would protect them if somebody was going to go hit them, we need to protect them if they are exposed. You wouldn't take your kid probably to a concert where people were swearing up and down, right? Because that probably wouldn't feel appropriate. in the same way, you need to be thoughtful about where your kids show up and how people are behaving. And this can put us into some kind of uncomfortable situations, right? So I remember my dad, Avasholem, adored my kids and they adored him, but he was addicted to the news. And so when we were with them, which was often, we have a shared summer home, he always had the news on. And at some point I had to say to him, I need you to turn that off. Even if they're not watching it, the kids are being exposed to it and that's not helpful to them. Yep.
Can I say something?
Yep.
In our house, the Holocaust is talked about all the time. My parents literally went on like a 6-week. Oh. The Holocaust is talked about all the time in
Close,
our house.
close.
I'm just gonna yell.
No, but that's not going to help the people on Zoom. I know.
Okay, long story short, I made it very clear. I would just say little ears. And like, I would take the brunt of the arguments later, but I would say, you can't be around my kid if you can't be aware. So if I hear anything coming up, I would just say little ears. And I wouldn't make them shut up. And you just have to be that like, and I've been doing this for almost 10 years with tequila. So like, it's a new version, but like my parents can't have a conversation about their 6-week atrocities tour to, Eastern Europe in our house with their friends. They have to go out to a restaurant because I don't want her to know that. So, I mean, but it's like, it's a very aggressive little ears. Just everyone can hear and I will shut that down so quick.
Yeah. And it's a developing skill, like as a new parent, needing to set the limits for your kid can be really uncomfortable, especially at the beginning, because you're not sure what the reception is going to be, right? So sometimes a conversation ahead of time to say, this is what we're worried about, and this is what we're going to do, will help sort of set that up. Okay. So another issue that I heard was, what am I going to do when my kids are in these environments? So there's 2 levels of it. And this is something that I've struggled with as well. I have very mixed feelings about some of the things that the IDF is doing. I'm not in the IDF. I am not in charge of this war. I'm really grateful for many things. That's one of them. But I still can I have those mixed feelings. And I absolutely know that people around me have probably fewer mixed feelings, but stronger feelings on this is not okay space.
Likely less information.
And probably less information, or information that is very different from the information that we're accessing. Okay.
Different.
Yeah. They probably have lots of information. It's just not the same information, which is part of what's making it really hard. So I think that some of that is educating our kids that situations are very complex. Now, when kids are littler, those are really tricky conversations because their brains don't hold the same, they can't hold opposing ideas at the same time.
I apologize for interrupting if you were going to get to this, but at what point do you think that nuance? I know it's different developmentally for each kid, but we talk a lot in our house about both of these things.
Yeah.
At what age do you think that really sinks in?
Yeah.
I think clearly from our society, some people never get there.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm fighting
Right.
against that every day in my own house, so I'm.
I think so.
When,
I think that,
as a general
I
rule.
think it's kind of it's a developmental stage.
It's a developmental stage that comes with the teen years. I know, right? Like, could we move that up? But we can't. But that doesn't mean that kids can't hold the ant, right? Because kids absolutely do. Kids understand that. I'm trying to think about a really like benign example. Cookies are not so healthy and we get to eat cookies, right? So kids have the ability to hold more than one idea, but the morality and things like that, they're not going to be able to hold. So I think we're going to have to give them some of that language. The recommendation is always to role play situations with kids. I've yet to get a kid to be willing to do that with me. Sometimes, but like really, really rarely.
Thanks for saying that, because I feel like that's always a like strategy, like role play. Like my kid would never do that with me. Like that would be so fake.
Right.
Cute for someone else.
Yeah. I wish I knew how those people got to that place where their kids were willing to do that. I will sometimes give my kids statements to try, but let's face it, we all know that until it's come out of your mouth a couple of times, it's not really yours anyway. Oddly enough, this may be one of those places that online resources can be helpful because they'll hear it from an online resource in a different way than they'll hear it from us. I don't like that fact, but I know that it's true. Depending on your kid, not. I'm sorry, I'm Tracy. I don't know the age of your kids.
5 and 7.
5 and 7. Great. Okay. Just trying to sort of hold the room. So I think it's important that we talk to our kids about the fact that there are a lot of very strong feelings on both sides of this. This is kind of the two wrongs don't make a right, like live and in living color. I'm trying to think about how I want to take my politics out of this, but think about how to talk to kids, or how it can be helpful to talk to kids. So one of the places that I think can be really helpful here is empathy, right? So understanding that different people are having different experiences. Again, not so much with your little one, right? With your little one, it's really straightforward. It's scary things are happening in Israel. This is a place that we care about, have family, right? Whatever your situation. And it's making lots of people feel really upset, right? Like that's the version. And I want to start with, the first place I think you always want to start with your kids is asking them what they know. Right? So I always start every conversation with my kids with, what do you know? A, it engages them. And B, I don't end up repeating stuff that they already know, right? So then I get the eye roll, which I'm going to get anyway, but still, I try to minimize the eye roll. And if they have misinformation, it's a really quick way to find that out, right? And not to shame them about it, but just to understand that kids get information from lots of places and it's not always going to be accurate. So I always start, no matter what age, what do you know about it? And let them tell me what they know. And then, do you have any specific questions? Because sometimes they do. And sometimes it's in the telling you about what they know that they start to remember where they were when they heard it, and they'll remember some of their questions. And then you get to answer the questions as best you can. So when I think about like how to talk to kids, what do you know? Do you have questions? And then what information do I think that you need to have to go out into the world? And how do I explain it to you in language that's going to make sense to you? Right. And I love the handout, which was created actually by somebody who works at Lurie, but created on her own. And I also know that kids are so different these days that the age ranges might or might not be accurate, right? But you know what language you speak to your kids in. That stuff is probably not so complicated. So the next level that I'm hearing though is, what am I doing about when my kids are in these environments where people have very different reactions and feelings? And both of my kids, oddly enough, are transgender. Different, it looks different for both of them. They transitioned at different ages, but both of them. And that actually has given me a decent model for how to think about my job when they go into spaces. And it's given me, there are people who write about it and talk about it. So in that way, I get to bring you that wisdom, which is that it is not our it is not our kids' job to educate the adults in their environment. It's ours to prepare that space as best we can. And as they get older, they take on more of that. But especially when they're younger, sending something to teachers and the social worker and whoever the head of curriculum is to say, I'm aware that this is happening, that my kids are a minority in your school, and I want you to have this information from this reliable source. And I try to find really neutral sources, right? So I'm not sending Haaretz. I'm not sending the Washington Post. Those might be things I read, but that's not what I'm sending, right? Maybe I'm going to send CNN, right? So I'm going to find but it's about a set, or NPR, right? What can I find that is as central as I can find? The New York Times, it's a lot better than what I could be sending, is kind of what I'm going to say. And I'm going to look for things that are created to share. And I don't have anything specific. It's not something I've looked for, but I'm pretty sure there's stuff out there. There are Jewish sources that are creating these resources as well. And you kind of have to decide based on where you're sending it and what you think the reception is going to be. Do you want to send it from Jewish sources? Do you want to send it from a sort of US news source? And sometimes I'd send two. But I figure it's our job to provide the information. We cannot control what they do with it, but we can provide it, and we can share our concerns, and we can share what we think might be helpful. So if we think it might be helpful for our kids to have the social worker or have their favorite teacher check in with them every few days to see how things are going, we can ask for that. It's not a guarantee we're going to get it, but we can absolutely ask for it. Right? Who do our kids feel are safe people in their environments? Do those people know that our kids consider them safe people? And have we shared with them the information that we want our kids to have? So I can't control everybody out there, but I can give my kids a safe space somewhere in that environment. Does that make sense? Okay. And then there's the prepping the kids for when people say stuff, right? So your kid who corrected the teacher, bravo to them. Like, congratulations, that was amazing that you did that. I'm sorry you had to. That shouldn't have to be your job. And I'm really proud of you that you were able to stand up for yourself. Both pieces. I'm trying to think about what else I want to say on this topic. I think giving our kids phrases can be helpful, right? And they can be more neutral phrases. Like, I don't really want to set our kids up to be the defenders of their faith. at these ages. High school, I think, is a different place. And if they have a passion in that area, and quite honestly, if they're getting close to going away to college, we're going to need to give them more of those skills. But it sounds like the oldest we've got here is like 12 or 14. So we're not like, that's not where these kids are right now. They're not going off to college yet. Yep. Please.
But I also have friends whose children are applying for college right
Okay.
now. And one of them who they've had a strong education in Judaism, she now doesn't want to write down that she's Jewish on her college applications.
Okay.
And she's applying to 20 different schools, very prestigious schools, because of what's happening at Stanford and Yale. And she also, at this point in her life, is very liberal, and doesn't agree with a lot of the things going on politically in Israel, but to the point of where she doesn't want, she feels like it will be to her detriment to identify. So my children also spend time with older ones, and this is happening.
Okay. You know, the reality of being Jewish in the United States is that we are a minority, and different kids are going to figure out how to navigate that, right? Like they're going to figure out how to navigate that in their own ways. So, you know, a kid who is really liberal and they're going to make certain choices about places they want to go to school. And they may have a lot more information now than they had a month ago about what the administration, the leaders of those schools believe and what kind of stance they're going to take. I would hate to believe that we've come back to a place where we need to hide that we're Jewish. But, you know, we've raised these kids in an environment where it has been fine to be Jewish. We're like the second generation that feels that way, right? Like my mother's 81. There were places she could not go because she was Jewish. There were neighborhoods that they couldn't move because they were Jewish, right? We're really early in, like, we're the inventors of this experience. And the reality is that throughout history, yes, there have been places that are more or less actively welcome Jews. And if you're in that age range, right, that's just a reality. And we can listen to them and we can empathize with how they feel about it. And we can talk to them about what they want to do. Right? Because that's the beauty, is that one of the things that's the most helpful is doing something. So if kids are feeling helpless, or we adults are feeling helpless, we can find things to do that will increase that ability. So this is the reality. In some ways, I think it's easier for kids who are home still to be learning that reality in a more confined space, like a more protected space, than kids who are already off at school and who are suddenly like, what the hell? I didn't know this about this place that I was. That's probably not helpful. I mean, let me rephrase that. I hope it's helpful. I don't think it's comforting. Right? I'm a firm believer in life is hard. Life has wonderful moments of joy, but life is generally pretty challenging. And the more that our kids can learn about handling challenges while they're in our house, the more we can help them gain those skills, the better we've prepared them for life. So your kids who are having to navigate spaces where they're the only Jewish person, that's the majority of the United States, right? So learning how to navigate that, it may not be fun, but it's a really good skill to have. How many of you are working in environments where you're the only Jewish person? Okay, or one of few. So how do you handle conversations with colleagues who may have a different take on what's going on? You just don't. Okay. Okay.
Like I don't have it in me to produce a fight comparison.
I just don't have it in me to turn it into a fight or you're right, I'm wrong, even if I don't feel that way. So I just don't.
Okay. Okay.
I work with a very, very small group of people, and mostly the only topic of conversation is asking out of concern. They're
Okay.
being kind, but it's exhausting to go any further.
Okay.
That we're very lucky, we're safe. Thank you for asking. You know, I can't get into the weeds about it because I'm exhausted.
Have people said inappropriate things? Okay.
That's my face.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I work in a pretty big company. It's like 8,000 people,
Mhm.
but my team is like 25.
Mhm.
No one had checked on me. Like no one checked in with me. And so I started to get really loud and actually like, I will say my team of 25 people are very like smart, wonderful people usually, right? So like typically like I would feel safe and comfortable saying anything to them. And so I actually took my opportunity to actually just come out to them and tell them that I'm having a very, very hard time. And especially with the fact that no one checked in on me, that, this is not a geopolitical issue that we're talking about right now. Like my people were just slaughtered. You probably don't understand that Jews have a connection to Israel. That's not a normal connection. Like we feel something inside of us. It's not whether or not we know people there, whether, we have people that are hostages or whatever it is, that we feel like it's our home. We feel like all those babies are our babies. Like I tried to explain to them, like, you can't know this because you're not Jewish. So I feel like this is all about like, you can't argue with the feeling. You can't argue with me telling you that, my people were just slaughtered. Like that is true. And that I'm having a hard time with it. And that a lot of Jewish employees are struggling so bad because no one has checked in with them and explained to the team that like, this is triggering so much intergenerational trauma from us. We were born knowing this. And this is the first time that we've actually felt scared in this way. And I'm feeling scared. So I'm not going to be quiet about it. And I need you to check in on me. And I need you to know that I'm really distracted right now. Like my work is probably not going to be the best work I've ever done. So, I mean, I'm very mid-level in my company. And at this point, I've gotten to like the head of HR and been loud with them too. I've had a very good experience because I don't think anyone would say to my face anything negative. No, and people have called me and tried to talk about the political parts and they've supported me. I think maybe I'm just working with really good people, but a company of 8,000 people can't all be good people. So I don't know, like I think like maybe we'd all be a little more impressed with our coworkers. I don't know, like I don't know where anybody works, but I'm using that as like some comfort there that none of those things are controversial. What I said, none of those things are controversial. So I'm just staying with like the facts of like, I'm scared, I'm feeling this way.
Yeah.
You can talk about it. Anyway.
Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead.
Is this on? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I am a mental health counselor and I have an equity team at my work and we're a very small team. Maybe the whole company is 15 of us total. And I'm on the equity team and the equity team talks about racism and discrimination and all these things that come up. Nobody said anything to me. I was so hurt. I was livid. I was overwhelmed with emotion because of what had happened. I was shocked. And I thought to myself, oh, it's a workplace environment. They're not supposed to cross that boundary. That was one way that I like consoled myself in the midst of just being in a total state of shock. And this was like, you know, it happened on a Saturday. So this was like by, I think, Monday, where I was like, oh, they're like going to a training, like 5 of them are going to a training. They must be like, whatever. I had all the reasons in my head as to why nobody checked in. So I finally put out like the most passive aggressive message to the group, which was like, hey, I know some of you are traveling, but if you have Jewish clients or friends, they're probably not okay, i.e. me, your teammate, like, hello, people. And then I just went berserk on Facebook, which I never do. And because I'm just like a contracted therapist, where I'm Facebook friends with some of them, and they got the message. They sort of checked in. They were kind of like, but I never felt really fully seen or understood. I still don't. And it's created a huge barrier in my workplace. And I did have a whole hour-long presentation to the equity team, of which like, I think 4 or 5 people showed up, and it was hard. And I feel like I'm carrying and holding so much, and thinking about what my kids are experiencing. They're just getting all the emotions that are in the space. And it's very hard. You know, my kids are amazing. They're resilient. They're smart, they're getting it, but my husband is the rabbi here. And so between my own holding of my stuff, my sister's husband being Israeli, everybody's talking about it all the time. And my kids can't help but react to the emotions in the house, like I am, right? I'm reacting to the emotions in my workplace and in society. And I'm bringing that home, and I'm trying not to, and trying to create normalcy, but it's been really hard.
Did you want to speak to someone? Did I miss somebody on this side?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I work for myself, and I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, and I do home visits, and then I do a lot of consultation, and I work with, so I'm in their spaces, and a lot of people want to know certain things about me, especially with the high holiday. Some of them I've been with them for a while. So it's always a careful balance of managing, you know, being connected and sharing some things about me so they don't feel totally exposed, like I'm just in there. It is extremely awkward. I feel like I'm working extremely hard all the time. A lot of people will say something, and usually there's a but in there. So the Israelis had it coming because of what's been going on in the Gaza Strip and everything like that. And so I'm sorry, but I think it's very difficult for me to handle this. It's wearing on me. And I often am the point person. In all of the work that I do, and all of my colleagues.
I'm sorry, you're often the what person?
I'm the point person,
You're the
I'm
point
the
person.
minority.
Okay,
So a
thank
lot
you.
of people come to me and ask me for resources. People at daycares are asking me for resources, but it's extremely difficult. There's a lot of things happening at my husband's high school. It has a pretty high Arab population. There's a lot of anti-Semitic things happening there. They don't have any Jews there that I know of. And so I'm not confident that the school's handling things. And my husband actually spends a lot of time with Palestinian students. So he has a lot of sympathy for them. So it's causing a lot of hard conversations in our own home. So I don't know what my question is besides that. It's exhausting.
Okay, so anybody else?
I can share, I have the good fortune of working in medicine, not as a practitioner, but as an administrator. And my medical directors are Israeli, thank God, or Jewish. So I'm very fortunate, but I did have someone who I worked with who did in last job in somewhere I worked, I won't say where, did make disparaging comments before this about Jewish people, and I did go to HR. And I was like, I need to put this on record. And I was worried about retaliation, but they said that the company has a strong policy on retaliation. If there's any of that, then that's ignorant comments are ignorant and unintentional, maybe. Retaliation is intentional and purposeful, so that they wouldn't tolerate that. So I felt proud and comfortable in what I did. And I did talk about it with a couple people that I'm close to at work, and they were like, I'm very glad you did that.
Great, thank you. So here are a couple of things that I want to share. First of all, and I learned this during COVID. This was a muscle that I built during COVID. How much could I expose myself to news, and when did I need to turn it off? 24 hours, 24/7 news coverage of what's going on in Israel is not going to be good for anybody's mental health, nor is it necessarily helpful to the people who are in Israel, right? It was really easy to spend way too much time looking at what was going on in COVID. That was not useful for my mental health or my ability to show up for my family. So I think it's super important that we self-moderate both what we're exposing ourselves to and how much we're talking about it at home. That at a certain point, and I don't know if any of you guys figured this out, but I figured this out during COVID. At a certain point, I can feel it where this is now costing me emotionally more than I have. And whatever reason I have for watching it, it can be watched later. It can be watched in a different, whatever. My mother always says this. Isn't it annoying how the things your mother says become true over time? You need to take care of yourself because you are the head of your household. And where you go is where your household goes. So when we start to go sideways because we've been exposed to too much, our household is starting to go sideways. And, my husband is a news addict, particularly when it comes to Israel. We have family there, we have friends there, all of those things. And there are times that I say to him, it's time to turn that off. It doesn't look like it's being helpful anymore. So some of it is that. And some of it is, how are we taking care of ourselves? So who came up with things during COVID to help take care of yourself that you maybe didn't do before COVID? One. No. Two. Nobody did anything new during COVID. You didn't walk more. You didn't take breaks. You didn't meet people, anything. Family Zooms.
We had these weekly Zooms.
Right. Okay. It is time to pull that stuff back out. Those were the things that helped feed us in crisis. And our community and can feel like us, we are in crisis. So it's time to pull that stuff back out. And it's time to make sure that our families have moments of joy and fun and silly and all of those things. Because they have to coexist alongside. And when I say that, I feel like I've lost the word, which happens a lot. It's an age thing or a stress thing. I feel like I'm abandoning my Jewish brethren in Israel, right? That's what it feels like when I say that. And I know as a mental health provider that my going under is not helping anybody in Israel. And it's harming me and my family and my community here. It's harming my ability to do my work well. It's harming all of those things. And so I have to sit with that juxtaposition. My creating fun experiences for my family during COVID did not take away anything from people whose loved ones were dying of COVID, right? It's that and again, they exist simultaneously. So I think in a lot of ways, our job is to protect our families and our kids. And some of that protection is going to be what can we do to be helpful? Right? What are we going to do to make things different? Are there places we can send cards? Is there money we can give? Is there a rally we're going to go to because that seems important to us? What are the actions we're going to do? And beyond that, stay informed and focus on living your life. Does that sound awful?
Yes.
Feels like my privilege to show. I get to have the choice to do this.
And you have the privilege of living in the United States. And you do. Right? Because those are choices that we've made. But I think for me, and this is where I keep going back to, is my focusing on it all the time helpful to anybody? Yep.
So I totally agree, because I think self-care, all of that is so important. And with COVID, there was a collective experience that our whole community was in. And there were people who were like, oh, it doesn't exist, or like, it's a farce made up, but I wasn't around those people. And now I am not in the I'm in only my Jewish collective. Like, so there's, yes, I need to do my self-care. And wow, there are people I can't go do my self-care with. I can't go for a walk with them because I'm going to be. There are some people for whom my self-care looks very different now than it did in COVID, because I don't think those people can come over to the house maybe because I don't want to have to explain my whole existence as a Jewish person right now. That's a big stress. Or like, I only want to be around Jewish people right now who kind of understand what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And so it's just different. Like, it's like, yes, I still have to do those same things. And the generational trauma that we have for however many thousands of years that has been sparked. Thinking about my parents, I'm like, holy cow, when my parents were little, my grandparents were doing what I'm doing now, which is stressed, hiding, right? My parents were born during the Holocaust in the United States. And I'm standing at the kitchen counter cooking and thinking, this is what my grandparents did. They tried to carry on when they had little kids in the house while the Holocaust was happening and they were watching it on the news. So I think, yes, it's like COVID, and we are also battling systematic anti-Semitism that's just feels like a storm coming at us. And so it does feel like, yeah, I need to do my self-care, and it's different than COVID in that.
Yeah. And I'm not saying the situation is the same. I'm saying that some of the coping skills we developed can be used. Because I do think that it's been kind of easy to live in the United States and not be so aware of what a minority we are.
I just wanted to add from the chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just adding from the chat from Terry, a quick addendum to Lisa's comment about my high school. Yes, at school, we try to show empathy for all of our students' concerns, but an anti-Semitic events at school do not go unreported or ignored. I just reported an incident this weekend that occurred on Friday.
Yeah. So standing up, in some ways, I think those are the scary parts, but they're really clear. Like, anti-Semitic event needs to be reported. Like, that stuff, I think, can be a little bit more clear. And I think we are facing the reality of what it means to live in this really multicultural society. Right? And that's really hard. And that's why we belong to Jewish community, right? So that when things like this are hard, we are part of a community that understands, so that we don't feel so isolated. Yep.
I would say, as great as all that is, we're still isolated.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I keep saying, like, I just feel like an island of grief and despair, you know? So yeah, Rachel and I will go for a walk, but then we go back to our respective homes and we are surrounded by, I had to sit there and ask our neighbors, anyone who could see our house, including down the street, to please look out. We have had anti-Semitic attacks on our house before because we have the flag up. We've had it for over a decade up. it is, I'm having to go and ask people for help when I feel like I can't trust anybody. And I will say my foundation of safety here. I lived in Israel. I lived in Israel during war, and I feel more unsafe here because everyone I counted on didn't show up. They didn't check in. When they finally did, it was, can I pray for you? Which is, insulting and upsetting, and because I'm here. And then it was like, yeah, it's hard on both sides. And then it's, depending on the person, they either got, we can't talk right now. I can't, murdered babies are murdered babies. Like, I can't do that. Or I can sometimes have that conversation. But it feels, I hear you when it's self-care, but like, who do you go to when you don't trust anybody you trusted 3 weeks ago? The people I would have, God forbid something happened to me, I would have left my kid with, never reached out to me. And I'm on a text chain with them. I know that they're alive. I know that they're talking about shit.
So I want to question something, and this may get me shot down, and I'll own that. And I also want to say that it's 10:45, and we said we were going to end at 10:45. So if there are people that need to go do other things, we're good with that. I don't know that other people necessarily understood that what we wanted and needed was to be checked in on. I just don't think they got that. I don't think people understood. Yeah, I just don't I don't think this happened.
Because we've had enough posts on social media, check in on your Asian friends, check in on your gay friends, check in on your Black friends, check in on your coworkers, check on this, check on this. We had enough of those posts that people can say to their companies, look at what you've done X, Y, and Z times. We've already been through this. We went through Pittsburgh and people checked in. How is
Oh,
it?
interesting.
Because I celebrated Shabbat and I had 20 text messages after Pittsburgh say, I am going to warn you that the world has changed. How is it that in Pittsburgh, I got people reaching out to me?
Because that's in the United States.
No, I say no. Everyone I know knows I lived in Israel. Everyone I know knows that I'm Jewish. I disagree with that. And I think that's a cop out. And Rachel and I have had this conversation. Where are we going to, how far are we going to let people drop so that we can still be kind and friendly to them? And I say, I'm not going to let it drop because they would not have hit us. Who the fuck is looking out for us? I mean, we can't hide each other. That's not how this works.
Okay.
So I say no. I say no. I say we have to hold people to a higher degree. And it cannot be both sides.
Okay.
That is, I think that's bullshit. You can check in on, you can still say, how are you doing? How is it that hard to know that you have a Jewish person in your life and say, how are you doing? It cannot be that hard. Or we don't mean that much. And our blood is cheaper and easier to explain away. So I say no, just because it happened in Israel does not mean there are flights. There's 24-hour news. There are Americans being held. There are Thai and French and Mexicans. There are other people who are being held as hostages and other people who died. How come our blood means less? I say no, we have to hold people to a higher degree.
And we can. And we need to understand that then we need to be explaining that to our kids as well. This is why I'm separate, and it's fine, but then those are the things that we need to help our kids understand. This is why I am not engaging with this group of people anymore. Because I've become more aware that these are not the safe people. These are not the people that I can count on. And
It's tough because it's in their class. It's like they're,
right, right. And I'm not saying that that's what everybody needs to say. I'm saying that, and the reason that I started out asking you about what was happening in your workplace and how you were responding is because those are the examples that you can give your kids. Not by telling them, but by talking about it at the dinner table. Because God knows if you try to tell them, they're not going to listen. But if you talk about it with somebody in their presence, those can become examples of how you handled something. And that will open up these conversations about what they could or couldn't do.
I was always taught, I'm also Latina. I always
Mhm.
was taught that family's always first. Like there's nothing like your blood. And guess what? My daughters have Ashkenazi Jewish blood. So that's gonna be our family, period. Our Latin American family online also think has been posting like pro-Israel themes, you know, so I think that's it. And I was just thinking, like, my daughter's last birthday party, for example, like I did invite her whole little classroom at her elementary school. Most of them were her little religious school friends. So that's it.
There's a question on the chat and I want to make sure we get everybody. If it's here with me. Second. From Terry. I work at a public high school. I work with a Muslim student population. What suggestions do you have for not being insensitive to the concerns and comments, but also letting them know that there are both sides and stories to this current conflict? How do I neutrally and professionally communicate that there's a suffering occurring on both sides?
Yeah. So I will say I'm not a Jewish educator. I'm not an educator technically, although I play one in your synagogue. But I think what she's asking is, I'm sorry? Oh, this is your husband. What he's asking.
Last name I got is.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
There's a lot of conversation, there are people that would be like.
Okay.
Terry, correct me. 25.
Oh, can you give?
Sorry.
Okay. So, right. So you have sitting at your table some of the difficult conversations that are happening out in the world, right? You're coming at this from very different places. You're sitting in very different places. And who we sit with and who we talk to influences a lot about what we think and believe. For starters, I think you need to make sure that you're okay with the administration and whatever that you're going to do is sort of a pre-approved by the administration, only because you don't want it to fly up in your face. But I think finding resources that hold both sides, and he teaches high school, right?
So, I've been texting. He teaches, he's an ELL teacher.
Okay.
The name keeps changing.
I'm just putting the microphone.
It used to be ESL, now it's English Language Learners.
Yeah.
Naperville is a very large district.
But it's high school. That's the,
It's high school, but he particularly works with a lot of refugees and people that have moved from other places. So he has a high population that has had traumatic experiences
Mhm.
themselves that aren't necessarily like embedded in American culture.
Mhm.
He also works with a lot of different Spanish speaking, but right now, because of the political environment, the population has increased that are Arab identified.
Yeah. So this is my opinion. This is not an educator's response. But I think at that age, you can expose them to information in the media that represents both perspectives. And that's where you have those conversations about where do you get your information and how do you know what to believe? Because these kids are living in a world where they can find anything they believe, they'll find somebody who's saying it. Right? And so our opportunity and obligation at that age is to be educating them on being thoughtful consumers of what they're seeing. So what are they hearing at home? What are they seeing on social media? It's the same conversation kind of as I talked about having with your kids. What do you already know? What questions do you have? And here are some resources that I believe are trustworthy, right? But these kids, unfortunately, have a lot to teach us about what it means to live in fear and to understand that people are not going to protect us and what that looks like. They're going to have a very different take on the situation, depending on where they've come from and what they've lived through, than we are. And for them, it's intergenerational trauma, but it's also their individual trauma. And I want to thank you for voicing your experience, because I think it's a really important experience. And I think you articulate well the experience of the survivor community and what this feels like that can be different from people who are not part of that community.
I want to tell one more comment from the chat.
Is it all Terry again?
No. No, not this time. That's why I specifically wanted to make sure everyone knew they were getting heard. This is from Phyllis. An anti-Semitic incident should also be reported to the ADL.
Yeah.
Terry, you get that?
Okay. Questions, comments, thoughts?
But we need this for parents, not talking to our kids. I feel like we need some resources in the process, because everybody clearly we're have a lot.
Yeah. And we've done these sessions also for adults. I can't come back next week because I'm leading my DEI at my synagogue. But I could either get somebody else or we can find the right time.
Can we just get a quick assessment? Because part of the reason why I'm here is also what are more needs that we see coming? Would that be something you'd be open to coming back for a parent session?
No, for an adult
I
session,
apologize.
not
I'm
parents,
sorry,
adults.
Adults. Yeah,
I think we could all get other people to come.
I will say, I can't think for myself, I am happy.
Am I getting my steps in?
I can't show up every week. I just have too many. I'm done.
so Sunday, this time.
Sunday during, when my kids are here, that we're not doing the caregiver, or the parent education. I think it's good for me personally, but I just can't attend anything in the evening.
Yeah. Very valid. Is anyone? So a quick assessment, just trying to standpoint with, being current, would next week be something we'd be interested if there was an adult conversation on this topic?
I think there's going to be things going on like Sunday.
Okay.
Already with some of the younger grades, and there's like a family service, and then the first and second graders come thing,
So,
how would I put it to next?
All right, maybe we'll make
Okay.
it to the following meetings.
so different question. What if we were online during the week?
No, I would rather.
That's fine. That's just a question. You'd rather do it in person. That's fine. I
think it's also, I can't speak for anyone else. I'm a single parent. I need to be able to speak freely, and I need to be able to listen and not be distracted, even if I have headphones in. And you can't do that when we're all trying to make sure our kids aren't exposed to anything else. We don't want them to know.
okay. That's why we asked the questions.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
100%.
Yep.
I think just like evening and Zoom or whatever it is makes it difficult because they are still
Little ears, little ears. Okay.
Is there any other topic or thing that you're thinking of currently that you would like to have happened.
Look, you've become a focus group.
You have, sorry,
So anything else happening?
please.
So one of the things that was particularly challenging for me as a parent during COVID is that I am an introvert and the constant like, oh, you have to come up with all the activities and you have to figure out what you're gonna do so you can connect everyone and create these things was extremely exhausting. And I felt like so much was put upon me. I do so much that I have to do and I will do as a parent. But then trying to come up with fun stuff made me feel really resentful because I was just done.
Mhm.
And it also made me then feel guilty or culpable that that was why, or there was something wrong with me. And I can't be the party leader. That's not one of the skills that I have a lot of skills. At the age I am, if I was going to be the party leader, that would have already happened. So I think right now, you know, I can be a steady force. I can help, you know, create calmness and steadiness. But in terms of like, you know, coming up with fun activities to counter it, I don't have anything left. If we're in this kind of state, I need something offered to me, like presented as a menu. That's something that is within my wheelhouse as someone that doesn't want to lead like a Zoom party or something. That's yeah.
Yeah.
So.
So I guess my thoughts about that are I too am not like both my husband and I are way too serious to be necessarily good at that. So if you're lucky to have a partner who's better at that, then go at it. I found that I had some friends who loved doing it. And so we would sort of trade off. Like I'd take their kids sometimes just to give them a break. And then they would like watch movies and stuff like that. But then she would take them and do like art projects and all sorts of stuff that I would never in a million years have done. So sometimes it's just finding the other people. And sometimes like what's fun for your family may be taking a walk in nature. Like it doesn't have to be a party. It's what your family considers fun.
Yeah, well, having a 12 and 14-year-old, nobody wants to do anything. So.
Well, so that simplifies that. I mean, like we went and spent a half an hour yesterday at Spirit Halloween.
Oh, yeah. Tequila will just walk around.
Spirit Halloween,
And I
they were just so happy.
So now I literally done this where she will go and I will trail behind her, make sure she's still in the store on my phone. because I cannot get off my phone that long. And I know that that's an issue. But yeah, Spirit Halloween. I used to take her to DSW. And I would just sit down. I was having a really hard parenting time. Just sit down. And she would go bananas in the store. And she would try on all the really horrible high heels. She knew she had to put them back. And I get like 2 hours where I could just, yeah, it's no joke, cry in the corner. And I would just make sure she was there. She didn't know what she wasn't paying attention to me whatsoever. So yeah.
Yeah, it's weird the things that they consider fun and we don't. You know, Claire's, like it can be it's what's fun to them.
Oh,
It's not what we would think.
We're not spending any money. Just FYI, this is not like a money.
This is not a shopping trip.
I would lose it at Claire's. I would lose all my money at Claire's.
Ah.
I'm too tired at this point to say no. So yes, I'm just saying, but like that is something I've done for a long time of just.
Yeah.
Something that makes this,
It's okay. We can also decide to formally end and,
Yeah, let's do that and not.
well, we have to see if it's okay to the people on Zoom.
Oh.
Because that's really what the mic is for.
So then this is just a chat again.
Okay, so we're going to say goodbye to the people on Zoom, wherever you are.
I Zoom. What, Phyllis?
Okay.
Okay, so I can turn this off then.
Yeah, can we pull the circle in though? Because I'm having trouble with the fan on.
Something that I'm really trouble with is just that this is like the worst grief I've ever felt, like. But it wasn't like I'm sitting shiver people, right? Like it's not that I'm trying, I'm not, it's not that I'm not turning off, but like, it's not turning off inside. Yeah, that's off, right? So I